I think the problem is that you in your worldview, if you don't have objective reality that we can access, that there are no grounds for what we think, what we believe, how we behave, that you've got to have some kind of objective grounding for it. And it's very difficult for you to understand a world in which people have very distinct beliefs and understanding of what's true and how they want to behave if they don't have it grounded in these kinds of objective anchors, if you want to call them. I'm not sure what you would call them, but you've got to have these objective truths. And so it's very Platonic of you. I mean, this goes back to Plato, and it's completely understandable. It's what I used to think, uh, and now I realize it doesn't make any sense.
I just don't understand why atheists are just so arrogant. I mean, can we be serious about this conversation?
Most people do agree that when if they were seeing me here, they'd agree I was sitting in a chair.
Mhm.
I am sitting in a chair. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the heart of my question is when you call this a moral transformation, is this a change on a horizontal level in which it's just a change like, say, clothing styles have changed over time? Or is this an objectively good transformation that Jesus brought, that we ought to live the way that Jesus lived and support things like hospitals, orphanages, and poorhouses?
I would say some things are objectively good, in my opinion. I think it's good that we have hospitals. it's,
Okay.
it's good we have orphanage. It's good that we have disaster relief programs. I think these are good. This is my personal opinion. Since it's my personal opinion, I don't think it's objective. But my view is those are good things.
I'm going to be the real atheist, and I'm going to come at this from the real atheist standpoint and ask why. I have a feeling that atheists who actually watch this are going to have a real hard time with me being a real atheist and really presenting their real ideas from the perspective in which I would act if I believed a God didn't exist.
Um, I am not claiming in the book that Jesus' teachings are fully implemented by Christians or ever have been. Um, I do argue that Jesus had a different ideology of service rather than domination, and that was really quite different from anything you get in moral philosophy in the ancient world. I'm not saying that his followers followed his teachings on this. I mean, it's quite clear that the Christian church throughout history has preferred dominance at many times and still
Mm.
does today, and that many individual Christians have not taken on board the idea that you should live a life of service rather than a life of domination. And it's quite clear at every level in our society that hasn't taken on. But the intervention that I think that Jesus made that has stuck with us is that if we want to do good things for other people, we should focus not just on our family and friends, but on those in need, that's the priority. And I think that did make a radical difference in the Western world. Not just in the institutions, but also in our conscience. We think that we ought to do that.
As an atheist, I see a lot of Jesus speech from you, a lot of you imposing Jesus upon me, the atheist. I'm going to be the real atheist. Remember, I'm such a Christian that I'll give up my Christianity for a little while and tell you what it would actually be like if I really did it for real. If you prove to me that God didn't exist, I don't care anymore. I don't want to do 90% of the things that you atheist Christians believe that I should do. I don't want to take care of all these people. I don't want to help all these people anymore. I don't want to even be nice to people anymore. I don't understand where you get this. You get off saying that I would need to. I mean, this is exactly the problem with atheism. You guys aren't real atheists. You're Christians. You're Christians pretending to be atheists, pretending as though there's this right or wrong, there's this ought to system that you really don't have a right to tell me I ought to do anything. If you prove to me God doesn't exist, I don't ought to do anything. I ought to take care of my own family or ought to do whatever I want in the moment. I think people have a hard time really grasping that. And it's because atheists are Christians. They're just really weak Christians and don't realize it.
Okay, so here's where I think some clarity would help us here. You said in one sense that these are objective, and then twice you said, but in your opinion. So these are
That's right.
not objectively moral improvements within themselves. That's a part of my question. And maybe
Yeah.
we could clarify what we mean by objective. Is I pulled up a book on meta ethics just to read objective. And if you disagree with this, it's totally fine. He says, moral realism's basic claim is that some things are right and some things are wrong, or good or bad, regardless of people's beliefs, preferences, or attitudes regarding them. So just like there's certain historical facts true outside of us, there's certain scientific facts true outside of us, there's moral facts true outside of us. That's typically what's meant by moral objectivism. And so it sounds like you're saying you're a moral subjectivist, that the teachings of Jesus, they're based upon somebody's opinion, whether they adopt them or not. They're not actually objectively good within themselves. Did I categorize that correctly?
I think you're dealing with two different categories. Some things are objective. It's objective that there are public hospitals.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's not objective that that moral values are either good or bad. Usually, there's lots of subjective moral values. Is it good to kill somebody? Well, depends.
It's just such a cool little mic droppy, arrogant moment for Bart there to just be like, well, does it matter? And then pretending as though he answered the question, by saying, well, hospitals objectively exist. Pretending as though that's the question that anybody was asking. Nobody was asking whether hospitals exist or not. Like nobody's asking whether charities exist or not. But we would ask whether charities are objectively good or not. Because to claim that there's this objective right or wrong, that objective right or wrong needs to kind of be right or wrong for everybody. And if you're claiming that charities exist and therefore they're objective, you haven't answered the question of whether it's objectively right or wrong to have charities or not that they exist. And it's a very clever, very cool mic droppy way of dodging the question, but anybody who's not an idiot can see that he didn't actually answer the question, but he cleverly sidestepped it and then Mike dropped it to make it seem as though he said something cool.
You condemn anti-Semitism and violence against Jews, which you argue led to the Holocaust. So let's talk about that one. Are there circumstances that would make that okay? Or is it universally wrong to do what the Nazis did against the Jews?
I don't have any access to any kind of universal objectivity. I'm a human being, and I have thoughts and views. So do you. If there were something that was a universally objective moral value, our only access to it would be through our brains. And our brains are objects.
At the core of all that yapping that he just did, he really just said that he has no way of saying that Hitler and the Nazis were actually wrong for what they did to the Jews, but he cleverly sidestepped it in an extremely arrogant way to make himself sound very smart. But the fact is, just because you point to the brain as an object and pretend as though you said something really clever, at the core, you said that you cannot, based on your perception of reality, that you cannot, Bart Ehrman, say that the Nazis and Hitler were wrong. That's what you really said. And a lot of people will overlook that and not see that that's the arrogance in which they actually answer these questions. But it sounds so smart. But it's really all kinds of words to say absolutely nothing.